living a creative life is something that I don't think it was a choice. It chose me, and that's just the way it is.
That's today's guest, Kasey Kaufman, career journalist, television reporter, and anchor who found her calling as an artist later in life. Having never picked up a paintbrush until exiting her TV news career, she's blossomed into an amazing and prolific artist whose work is in demand. It's all about storytelling, only now she uses paint and canvas. So Kasey Kaufman joins me now from her, I don't know if it's an estate or not, but let's call it your estate in, is it Massachusetts, right?
In Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. Yes.
Cool. And Kasey and I had a little bit of history. We worked together at a TV station in Philadelphia 37 years ago. Sorry to bring up that number, but yeah, it's true. And WCAU at the time, it was the CBS-owned station in Philadelphia. Now it's owned by NBC. But Kasey was a reporter, anchor, and I was an associate producer, later executive producer. And I think I left there in 91 and you left before that, I think, right?
I was only there for 2 years. I was there from, I think I left in 86 and I came back to Boston. Well, not back to, but I moved to Boston, worked for WBZ TV for
that's right.
24 more years.
Right. So you were on TV in Boston. That's kind of that's your hometown, more or less, up there, right? That market?
It is now. It has 1986.
Wow. And so, some years have passed. And as I was just saying to Kasey before I started rolling here, I was noodling around on my Facebook feed for some reason. And somebody had posted a post that had a piece of art from somebody named Kasey Kaufman. And I said, how many Kasey Kaufmans, Kaufman, could there be? And sure enough, it was you. And it was a beautiful painting. I forget which one it was. And then you followed that up with the painting that was a tribute to the Ukrainian women, which was just striking and inspiring. And I guess my first question is really a simple one. When did you start painting? And have you been painting since you were 5, or did you start that within the last few years?
So I started 4 years ago, not even painting. I started sketching 4 years ago. And now I'm an artist and I paint every day. I sell my work in galleries online. It's insane. I never took an art class in my life. I am a self-taught artist.
And you started 4 years ago. So that means you started, I'm just taking a wild guess that you're 60-ish. So you started in your, later in life, let's just say. Why, why you spent your life as a journalist telling stories with words and with pictures and on TV. Why was art? Why was drawing? What drew you to drawing?
So
didn't mean to say that.
It's all about telling stories, right? So instead of using a video camera or the spoken word, I use a different toolkit now, if you will. But the answer is more of a dreamy answer. I always just loved art. I love looking at it. I love going to galleries. I love going to museums. I love buying art, but I never felt like I had permission to make art because I wasn't classically trained. That was, in my head. And about 4 years ago, almost exactly, I went to a wedding in California. Beautiful, beautiful place. It was in Carmel Valley, gorgeous inn, great art on the walls. I'm walking around with my husband. There's a studio of that artist. I walk in and I'm like, this is so beautiful. I love your work. She's painting. And I'm like, are you a classically trained artist? And she's like, no way. I'm a therapist. And I was like facing retirement. And I didn't want to golf. And so I took classes in intuitive art. And I'm like, whoa, my brain explodes. I go home. I can't stop thinking about it. I call her and I go, do you think I could take an intuitive art class? Do you know anybody in Boston? She called me back. She gave me the name of this person. To just cut to the chase, I am not cut out for intuitive art. I went once, she put on music, gave me a paintbrush, said, dance. And I'm like, this is too weird for me. And so I realized that what I was is somebody who might be an intuitive person, but preferred the fundamentals of art. And I started with drawing with fine charcoal. I learn how to learn to see. I then went into pastels, which I didn't like. And then about 3.5 years ago, I started working in acrylic paint, and I loved it, and worked a little bit with oil, some mixed media. But that's basically how I got into it.
You said something that has popped up in other interviews like this I've done with writers. You said you didn't think you had permission to do art or to be an artist. That's just that rings so true with so many of the people I've interviewed who felt the same way about writing, for example. And even Devin Alana, the young woman who I interviewed in my last podcast, who discovered she could sing, even though she never thought she could sing. Why is that? Why do we think we need permission to do, to create and to just be who we think we are?
I love Devin's story about singing at a karaoke bar. I felt like, it is a false narrative that you have to be classically trained to be an artist, whatever that means. I mean, and it is just so unfortunate that we put that kind of like ridiculous barrier on ourselves. Because it's so untrue, and it's it's just ridiculous.
Go to KaseyKaufmanArt.com. Kasey, it's spelled KaseyKaufmanArt.com. You'll see a lot of Kasey's work on here. And the piece that I'm always drawn to, as I told you before we started rolling, was this one that she calls Red Sail at Night. This one you posted this on Instagram and got a lot of comments on it. I don't know if you ever sold this one or not, but this one keeps bringing me back because I guess the red sail just pops out, and then it makes that little reflection on the glassy ocean against that dark cyan sky, and it starts making your imagination go. Where did you paint this, and was that a real boat that you saw out there, to just make this up out of nowhere?
So I love that you love that, and I sold that one. I've also sold a number of other red sails and some yellow sailboats. They do resonate with people, I think. It isn't really an accurate depiction of a sailboat. My daughter just got engaged to a guy who is a sailor and, competes in sailing. And, he would be the first to say that doesn't even really look like a sailboat, but it feels like a sailboat.
Sure.
And it's really the thought or the dream or the, just, I don't know. I just love the architecture of that sail. I love the way the color works against the gray or the blue background. It really does speak to me as well. And I'm glad that it spoke to you, because I do love that piece.
Yeah. I'm looking at your still lifes now, and you've got quite a few here. You've got flowers and vases. I really loved, you put one up, you did one of a paintbrush. It's a very textured kind of subject, the little bristles, getting all those little ends must have taken forever of the brush there. And what makes you pick? Is there anything special that makes you pick a certain subject, or do you just see something and say, I'm going to do something with that?
Well, I'm a daily painter, so I have this practice of daily painting. And when I started in the very beginning, I would just look at it as part of my creative journey that, let me attack a paintbrush, and just look at it, try to paint it. That evolved into other still life. So the practice of daily painting is fantastic because it forces you to really learn how to look at things. It's like anything. I don't know if it's a 10,000 hour rule, but you're going to get better if you do something every day, whether it's yoga or playing a piano or doing a podcast. And I think that for me, I don't go down to my studio necessarily with a plan. I have a bunch of canvases going at once. And I just sort of go back and forth sometimes. Sometimes it's a very linear experience, and I just am like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I sit down and I do it. Other times it's, I'm going to revisit this painting that I did 2 years ago, or paint over this painting, or whatever it is. But I do think that the practice of daily painting is really the cornerstone of my particular practice. And I don't really have, like, there is no method to the madness. I paint the kinds of things that I would want to hang in my house.
Sure.
And if you hang a lot of, you're a daily painter, you're gonna have a lot of stuff. And I do have, a studio in my home, which is awesome. And there was an open studio this past weekend, and everything is set up like it's a little gallery, and I can move everything around, and it's kind of a very cool thing, and it inspires me just being in the midst of it.
I'm interested in saying that you paint things that you would want to look at and hang in your home. That's the way I write. I write things that I think I would want to read if I was a reader. And I'm really not, I've written 6 books, and I hate to say it, but I'm really not a reader. So I try to write from the point of view of somebody who reads kicking and screaming. So I try to write, the way that I would want to read a book. One of the common threads in many of the other interviews I've done, mostly of writers, but also of the singer that we mentioned, is a lot of the inspiration of artists and creative people comes from pain in their lives, right? Some of the people I've interviewed, they were bullied as kids. Some may have been abused. Some may have been lonely. In Devin's case, she wrote some songs based on a relationship that went bad. I don't see any sadness in your work. And based on what I know about you from the brief time we worked together, I always thought you were a pretty upbeat, positive person. You laughed a lot and you smiled a lot, and you didn't seem to have a lot of tales of woe. And I'm guessing that that's still the case, right? I mean, you paint from a place of positivity and happiness. Yes.
I love it that you look at it that way. I think I do. I am, I'm a very fortunate person. So I don't have any tales of woe, except that there is a unifying feature here. Like if you look at my paintings and they are happy and they pop with color and I think joy, they were just a reaction in many ways to living under the Trump presidency. And every day I was just being bombarded with horrible stories, the fragile nature of our own democracy. I would come down to the studio and I can lose myself in joy. I am, I'm not drawn to painting dark and intimate, moments of angst and agita. I am about escaping that.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. I started during that time. And I think, a lot of my paintings are inspired by kind of real and imagined scenes of where I grew up. I grew up in Vermont, and then I moved to La Jolla, California. So I was on a lake, and then I was on the ocean. And I love the beauty of nature, and our environment is so fragile. So I do try to capture that. But mostly I'm just drawn to, expressing joy through color, I think.
It looks like that. I mean, the joy of color just jumps out in every one of these paintings here on your Vermont collection here. And this explains why you have some Vermont inspiration since you're from there. You have a bunch of pictures of barns here and these little, maybe it's the same barn, I'm looking at it, in these little outhouses. Is that is that a specific memory for you, or is that just something that you dreamed one night, or what is it about this building?
So I come back to that building a lot, and I don't know. I mean, I think I dream in color sometimes, and I wake up and I just sort of see like a combination of a magenta against some kind of a chartreuse tree with an explosion of violet flowers. And it's not real. It's not unlike Wolf Kahn, a great artist who was drawn to Vermont landscape and used Technicolor to sort of express it. No, they just kind of bring me a very peaceful feeling. I was probably a year into painting, not even barns in Vermont. I was in Stowe, Vermont, and I was in this gallery, and we were talking, and the woman looked at my Instagram, which is at 365 pairs, which is maybe a better place in some ways than my website, because it's every day I'm feeding it. Okay. And she's like, I'd love to sell your stuff. And I'm like, what? I was like, are you kidding me? I was nauseated. It was like, sell it. Like, I couldn't believe it. That was like, you talk about self-doubt. Like, it was like, you can't how can I sell my stuff? It's like, I'm not even really an artist.
Yeah, but what What a great feeling, and what a great validation that somebody thinks so much of your stuff that they want to actually own it. Now,
Absolutely.
pass some of that southbound to New Jersey here, will you please?
It took me a while to get there. Honestly, it was like, oh my God, it's like giving up. These are like my children. I can't give this up. And the woman's like, you can go and paint some more, honey.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, what? She's like, wait, hold on. What is up? And, but yeah, so Vermont is very, very special to me. And so is Bermuda. I have a big series of paintings that are in Bermuda, and the reflection of water. Southern California, a lot of sort of seascapes and also swimming pools.
An all-star concert for African relief.
And promoter Larry Magid told me just a couple of hours ago that the telethon portion of this Live Aid concert has raised about $13 million so far. And a lot of that.
Does your former life in broadcasting inform your art in any way whatsoever?
I mean, you know what? Storytelling is storytelling. And, you're only as good as like the whole edit process. I'd go to you and you'd be like, this sucks, rework it, right? Rework it, revise, edit, tweak, listen carefully for sound, the best sound bite, look closely in painting for the best composition. I think my days as a journalist definitely informs my painting in that process, in that I'm layer by layer by layer. I'm looking for the moment. I'm looking for the, just that shot that, is going to sort of define the piece, or in this case, like that brush stroke or that color. And yeah, I think it definitely is part of who I am. And I do think it continues to inform my work. And I'm lucky that I had 30 years doing it. I'm glad I'm not doing it anymore, but
tell me about it.
Yeah, I know. Not the same.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about it, I finally left the business for real, for good in 2007. And the beauty of that was I was able to turn the TV off. And I was able to turn the news off. What is your preferred medium when you're painting?
So my preferred medium is definitely acrylic.
Right.
I'm a fast artist, and if I had to wait for oil to dry, I'd be going out of my brain. And I'm also really a messy artist, and I can clean it up, and there's no toxicity. And there's sort of this, I think, maybe a myth that you have to be an oil painter to be a real artist. But, you look at Rothko, he used oils and acrylics, and, some of the great contemporary artists love working with acrylic. And I just find that it reflects the light well, and it dries super fast. I can layer the hell out of it. I just think it's beautiful.
So you said you paint multiple items at the same time. You've got different projects going on all at the same time.
I do. I'm sort of nonlinear in that sense. And I kind of like that. I'm kind of impatient. Maybe that is definitely the journalist, right? We're just, our attention span is so limited. So it is really nice to have a couple of things going at once. I have a very big commission that I'm starting where I probably have 12 paintings that I'm doing for this collector, which is pretty amazing. And so I like kind of moving around and seeing what I feel like doing on any given day.
I love stories of people who survive the news industry, because I consider myself a survivor.
When I left TV for good, and it was the right time to do it, I decided that I wanted to cobble together a very creative life. And I wrote a screenplay that almost, like, it was one of those like unbelievable stories. It almost got made into a very big movie, but at the very last second, they pulled out because Disney had just signed to do a movie, and it was a similar theme, a similar subject. And Pitch Perfect was that genre of film.
That's awesome.
Mine was better than Pitch Perfect, but that was great. And then I had a production company. I did a ton of videos for colleges and universities, and I did a lot of videos for Berklee College of Music, and I love music. And so, so I think living a creative life is something that I don't think it was a choice. It chose me, and that's just the way it is.
I wish you nothing but continued success and beauty in your life. It looks like you have a lot of that going on. Once again, my guest has been Kasey Kaufman, a former TV reporter and anchor who has now found a new life as a really great, productive artist. Check out some of her work at KaseyKaufmanArt.com and your Instagram page, which is?
At 365 pairs, PEARS.
Cool, thanks. And it was great to hook up with you again. And
yeah, thanks a bunch for having me on.
Take care and be well.
Great stories, great reads, great audiobooks. Visit TomKranzBooks.com for unique and compelling stories. That's Tom Kranz Books. You deserve a great escape.